the Highlands and Grampians, and the showers will be fairly frequent around the Northern and Western Isles. Now, for the rest of England, as well as for much of Wales, it's brighter skies with some sunshine and still fairly warm in the south, 26 or 27 Celsius, but high teens further north, where temperatures are actually a little below average right now. That will change, not just at the moment, though. For the time being, we're going to see the cloud thin overnight and the showers ease away before another spell of mainly light rain, but some moderate bursts pushes into Northern Ireland, Western and Central Scotland. 13 or 14 Celsius for Scotland and Northern Ireland, 12 to 13 further south under clear spells in the south, so not an oppressive night. We will see more of those at the start of next week, but Friday starts off bright with some sunshine in the south, the cloudier weather further north, and areas of rain moving through Scotland and Northern Ireland, as well as Northern England during the first part of the morning before that's replaced by showers. And again, on the cool side with those temperatures, 18 or 19 Celsius for Scotland and Northern Ireland, mid to high 20s in the south, where it will be another largely sunny day. Into Friday evening, the last of the showers in the north clear away, and then clearer skies start to emerge. And this is where things begin to change. High pressure arrives this weekend. Widespread sunny skies eventually develop and temperatures really start to increase.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Hello and a very warm welcome to On the Money, and of course we're focusing yet again on the UK's cost of living crisis, trying to help you beat the squeeze and today maybe even choose a Prime Minister, who knows. Well, I'm Mark Long here sitting in once again for Liam, and for the next hour we're talking about whether we can afford a new Prime Minister in these taxing times. The cost of food in your shopping basket has shot up yet again. The AA says petrol is still too expensive. And yet, still no word from those Tory party hopefuls on how they will tackle this cost of living crisis. Unravelling it all in the studio, joining us as ever, expert economist Jasmine Birtles. And down at Westminster, we've got our political editor Darren McCaffrey joining us. And as ever, a whole host of other hot topics coming up with people who really know their stuff. But first, all the latest GB News headlines with Rhiannon.
Mark, thank you. It's 1 minute past 1. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. The Foreign Secretary Liz Truss has launched her Conservative leadership campaign, saying she wants Britain to become an aspiration nation. 6 contenders remain in the battle to replace Boris Johnson: Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Tom Tugendhat, Liz Truss, Suella Braverman and Kemi Badenoch. Conservative MPs have just half an hour left to cast their ballots in the second round. The results expected at around 3 p.m. this afternoon, and the candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. Liz Truss says she's the candidate who can be trusted to deliver.
You can trust me to get the economy going, to get money back in people's pockets and to help squeezed families. Together, we will level up the country in a Conservative way, making it an aspiration nation. Together, we will continue to defy the voices of decline and stand tall on the world stage.
Liz Truss speaking earlier. Meanwhile, Social Care Minister Gillian Keegan is backing Rishi Sunak and told GB News he has widespread support.
Well, if you look at Rishi, actually, he's got people from all across the spectrum: north, south, red wall seats, shire seats, all different wings of the party, all different views on Brexit, different views on many different issues. He's actually united quite a large coalition. And as you say, he's also had pretty much every former Chancellor who is a Conservative Chancellor who is still alive saying that is the right thing to do for this time. This is what we would be doing. This is the sensible approach.
3 men accused of being leading members of an organised crime group have been charged with people smuggling offences. They were among 4 people arrested by the National Crime Agency in East London and Essex on Tuesday. They're accused of attempting to smuggle people into the UK in the back of lorries. They'll appear before Reading Magistrates Court later. Kevin Spacey has pleaded not guilty to sexual assault charges at the Old Bailey. The Oscar-winning actor is accused of 4 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. The attacks are alleged to have taken place between 2005 and 2013. He goes on trial next June. Low-income households will start receiving £326 from today, the first of 2 payments from the government to ease the cost of living crisis. More than 8 million households on means-tested benefits will start receiving the money automatically with no need to apply. A second instalment of £324 will be transferred in the autumn. It's part of the government's £37 billion support package. Alan Driver, who's already received the payment today, told GB News even the essentials are too expensive.
Everybody's had to go buy cheaper products, not name brands, and it's just detrimental. People need a little something, make them feel good every now and then in life. Whether that be a haircut, whether that be getting your nails done, or whether that be a bit of ice cream. When that sound comes outside your door on that ice cream, and you can't buy the ice cream. That's sad. That's sad.
To Ukraine, and at least 20 people are thought to have been killed and around 50 are in a serious condition after Russian missiles struck the Ukrainian city of Vinnytsia today. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said cruise missiles destroyed a medical centre and several houses. The president further condemned the attack, saying, "What is this if not an open act of terrorism?" And in Turkey, more than 3,500 people have been evacuated after wildfires spread to residential areas. A forest fire in the southwest of the country has now been brought under control 24 hours after it started. Wildfires have also hit other parts of Europe, including France and Portugal, where there's a second heat wave. Here, a Cobra Emergency Committee meeting is being called to discuss the measures in place to deal with the extreme temperatures expected over the weekend. And Emirates Airline has refused to cancel flights at Heathrow after the airport capped the number of daily passengers at 100,000. Emirates says Heathrow only gave 36 hours to comply and threatened legal action if they failed to do so. The airline also says rebooking passengers is impossible because of all its flights. They are full over the coming weeks. Heathrow says it would be disappointing if any airline puts profit before passenger safety. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. Let's return to On the Money with Mark Longhurst.
Rhiannon, thank you very much indeed. And welcome indeed to On the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, today again sitting in for Liam. And today, we're going shopping. First on the list, a new Prime Minister perhaps. Still plenty of offers out there. Buy one, get 5 free it seems. Yes, 6 candidates are still in that race, including the new party membership favourite Penny Mordaunt. Now, many are singing her praises, although a street survey by the research group Savanta Comres reported that 2 people shown her photograph yesterday immediately recognised her. Yes, as the singer Adele, no less. Well, we'll be saying hello, if you pardon that, to our political editor Darren McCaffrey, still sweating it out in Westminster with that second round of voting to get underway in, about 25 minutes' time. Liz Truss set out her stall this morning, stressing her financial competence as a former Chief Secretary to the Treasury. But we'll be asking the question, can we actually afford a new Prime Minister? Even though the OBR, that's Britain's tax watchdog, says there may be headroom to afford these tax cuts, it seems that none of the remaining candidates have actually addressed the question of how they're going to tackle the cost of living crisis. For instance, whatever happened to levelling up? Level down so much, it seems, in this leadership race. It's become a flat, featureless policy wasteland. Could there indeed be a price to pay for that when they all reach the checkout? Yes, will there have to be a general election at some stage when we all tot up the bill? Because it seems the crisis in everyday costs doesn't seem to be going away, while Westminster indulges itself in this political posturing. For instance, the AA again saying petrol should actually be 4 pence a litre cheaper at the pumps because wholesale prices have fallen. And if you can afford to drive to the shops, the latest figures showing a basket of some 20 staple items now 22.9% more expensive than this time last year. Milk and butter, some of the highest rises. Your semi-skimmed up 18.7%. Beans, cheese, eggs, all seeing double-digit increases too. And if that creates something of a shock to the system, you find even toilet roll has gone up by 13.6%. So we're asking Welsh dairy farmer exactly who's milking all those profits from the dairy industry. What should the potential new Prime Minister be doing to get food and farming industries on a more palatable footing? Also, just how bare is the cupboard? Is the help today, the government's first cost of living payment, remember, £326 being shared out. We're down at a Kent food bank to discover how far that will actually go as families try to manage, and Westminster perhaps makes a meal of the politics. So stay with us. You're watching GB News. I'm Mark Longhurst, and we're all on the money. Well, before we get stuck into that food bank and the empty cupboard, let's cross to our political editor live for us at Westminster. Darren, let's just reflect first on Liz Truss setting out her stall this morning. Interesting, she stressed her financial competence as a former Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Now, is that likely to win her more support? Because she may have been rather surprised by her relatively poor showing yesterday.
Yeah, indeed, only getting support of 50 MPs yesterday, Mark. You're right in suggesting Liz Truss's main competitor at this moment in time is Penny Mordaunt, and that's why you heard her make that pitch, as you said at the lunch a little bit earlier on today, that she had served as Chief Secretary to the Treasury for 2 years, effectively that she is ready to walk into this job, she would argue, from day one and be a stable hand on the tiller, i.e. alluding to, frankly, that Penny Mordaunt has not had as much experience in government as the current Foreign Secretary. But in saying that, as I say, this is a proper battle between the Trade Minister, Penny Mordaunt, and Liz Truss. Penny Mordaunt picked up many more MPs yesterday. She has also proven to be more popular among Conservative members, according to opinion polls. And in the end, there is a sense that there's momentum, not behind Liz Truss, but behind Penny Mordaunt. Now, in saying that, it's too early to write anyone off in this game, least of all Liz Truss. And the reason I say that is because there are two other candidates on the right, Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman, who are still in the race. I think it's pretty unlikely they're going to make it to the final two. The question is, where could their MPs, who total, I think, around 72 at the moment, where would they go? On the whole, you might well conclude they could go the way of Liz Truss. And that is a point that Lord David Frost is making today, saying and suggesting to those campaign campaigns, maybe they fold and get behind Liz Truss to ensure that she does make that final 2. And all this, of course, while Rishi Sunak is still in the game, more than still in the game, he is well out in front on 88 MPs. Today, could he get into triple figures after the support from Jeremy Hunt yesterday, who dropped out of the race? That is entirely possible. So, you know what? It's the weakest link, round 2 today. One of them is going to drop out. At least one of them is going to drop out. Who's that going to be? You'd have to conclude it is probably going to be either Suella Braverman or indeed Tom Tugendhat, who are taking up the rear at the moment. I'm not entirely sure where their extra MPs would come from. We are having voting closing in around 20 minutes' time, and then we're going to hear from Sir Graham Brady with the results at 3 p.m. this afternoon. You will not want to miss a minute, and I promise that, because it is really fascinating, really quite important, and, you know, for people like me, and I suspect for some of the viewers, quite exciting as well, Mark.
Yeah, a bit of entertainment, why not? Perhaps X Factor means, as you say, the weakest link, and plenty of strategic voting in that next 20 minutes. Darren, for the moment, back to you, of course, as we hear more, but let's turn now to Jasmine joining us, founder of moneymagpie.com, our studio economist as ever. Welcome to you on yet another exciting, entertaining, who knows, day. I was saying to Darren, we heard from Liz Truss this morning as she was setting out her stall. Interesting that she was stressing her financial competence. I've worked at the Treasury, I've been, Chief Secretary, because clearly there's a lot to try and work out on tax and this cost of living crisis.
Yes, as you say, cost of living crisis is uppermost in everybody's mind. I get emails all the time from Money Magpie and also my column in the Daily Mail, where people are basically saying, how can I cope? So she's absolutely right, I think, to try to put that across. Whether it actually does come across, of course, is another matter. Frankly, it didn't impress me. I didn't find Liz Truss at all interesting in terms of her ability or her attitude. I haven't heard what she has to think about cutting taxes, etc., and going forward. So I'm not interested in her. I'm appalled by Rishi Sunak, frankly, because I think he would be very dangerous to have. He's wanting to bring in central bank digital currencies, and that to me is absolute kryptonite, as you know.
Explain that.
Well,
is that a new currency, kryptonite?
Well, yeah, that's what I think. Yes, it's a new... Absolutely. So CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, use all the clever gizmos of cryptocurrencies. But unlike cryptocurrencies, which are decentralised, there's no central authority, a central bank digital currency pushes everything through the central bank. So the central bank will know everything that you've earned, when you've earned it, how you've earned it, where you've earned it.
And measured presumably against something like gold to give it the proper value.
That's what they should do, but they're not saying that at the moment. At the moment, it's going to be a fiat currency at the moment. But the other thing is that they would control everything you spend. So they would enable you to not spend or to spend immediately. You couldn't spend here, you can spend there. These are all the things that... Yes, exactly. So, anybody who's considering that, as far as I'm concerned, is out the water.
Yeah, and still this question mark about what we can and cannot do on tax cuts. We've had the OBR, which is like the tax watchdog, if you like, saying now we might be able to afford tax cuts because the recession is going to be so bad. Yeah. If you pump extra money into the system, it's not going to go into sort of frothy spending, if you like.
Well, yeah, to be honest, I think that we can't afford not to cut taxes, frankly, because, as you say, we're going into a recession. And this, I feel that actually Kemi and Suella are the ones who are clearest on that, to my mind anyway, that we do need to cut taxes. They have actually, well, certainly Kemi said that she would cut taxes.
But have they got the experience? Because, and you've touched on this, whoever's going to be voted in will have to be Prime Minister.
Yes.
They will have to be a statesman or woman. I mean, have they got that experience to carry that off?
It is a very good point. I think potentially they do. I'll tell you what I would like. Actually, I'd like them to do a job share. Hey, it's 2022. Why not have our Prime Minister as a job share? If they were together, they would be unstoppable, I think. But each of them...
Although I guess technically that's what the Prime Minister and Chancellor should be.
They should be, rather than fighting against each other. Yes, absolutely.
Right, Jasmine, for the moment, thank you. More from you, of course, as we go through this hour. But let's now talk to someone who isn't following suit with the rest of the party, it seems, in favouring either Rishi Sunak or Penny Mordaunt. Rachel McLean, a Conservative member for Redditch in Worcestershire, joining us. Rachel, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us. And I think we should mention, too, that you've had experience at the Treasury.
I have, yes. I was Sajid Javid's PPS a couple of years ago when he was Chancellor.
What did you make of Liz Truss stressing her experience and this whole issue of, financial competence, if you like?
So I think this election is more than just about experience, and we've seen that as the later stages have played out today. Because actually what we have seen is that people who don't necessarily have that cabinet experience in the current or just the immediately previous cabinet are coming to the fore. That's why we're seeing people backing people like Kemi, people like Tom and Penny. And actually people are looking for a change. And I think when you talk about experience, yes, of course, Kemi hasn't been in the cabinet, but the point is she's got 3 years of ministerial experience in very important departments. And it's not just about looking at what people have done in government. Kemi Badenoch is someone that's held very serious roles before she came into Parliament and into government. And I actually think we need more of that. She brings an intellectual framework from her work in business and as an engineer. And she's talking about the very serious issues facing our economy, such as driving productivity. And honestly, I really don't think that just having held a cabinet role is what we need right now to take the party and the country forward. And I would challenge anyone that says that. I mean, frankly speaking, I think Boris Johnson has been an amazing Prime Minister, and he's got a huge appeal to people, and he's delivered a lot for our country. But if you look at what did he do, he hasn't been a minister before he served as Prime Minister for as long as Kemi has. And his experience before that was in journalism. So I don't think that cabinet experience is the only criteria, nor should it be, to lead our party and lead the country.
And indeed, we've seen what happens when a journalist tries to run a country. However, let's go back to the policy aspect of this.
I don't think. By the way, I think he's done a phenomenal job of running the country, and that actually proves my point. There is no one way. There's no one formula to be successful. Boris Johnson has been an incredibly successful Prime Minister.
OK, so you set the stall out with Kemi, your chosen candidate. However, there are people reflecting on the policy issues as well as the personalities, saying, what's being set out to cope with the cost of living crisis. I mean, we've not heard anything from these candidates about the whole issue of levelling up, the Northern Powerhouse. Remember that? Whatever happened to that? It's disappeared.
That's simply not true. We've been talking about nothing else for the last 3 or 4 days in the hustings. So we have been, as MPs, questioning the candidates in a series of very detailed and very in-depth hustings events. I appreciate that not all of that comes out in the media. And in Kemi's case, she only actually started her campaign less than a week ago. So you'll appreciate she hasn't had the time to write sort of PhD level theses and produce videos and do all of that. She was the Minister for Levelling Up. She's been the Minister for Net Zero. She has a deep intellectual grasp of those issues. But she's very committed to those policies. In fact, sorry,
I was going to say,
I've got a delay on the line, sorry.
You wanted
to ask me a question.
But if she wants to be Prime Minister, why has she not set that stall out publicly and talked about levelling up and made that a real driving issue for her campaigning?
Well, I think she has. I mean, she's published a number of articles in the newspapers over the last couple of days. And to be frank, as I've just said, she's been doing this for less than a week. And we are doing it as a band of colleagues without any infrastructure. We're all working 24 hours a day. As I said to you, she was the Minister for Levelling Up. She understands it. She worked with Michael Gove. He was the Secretary of State. He is the one that's defined what levelling up means. She's got a deep intellectual understanding of it and how it drives jobs and growth and productivity. But actually, as I said right at the beginning, this is about driving productivity for all parts of our United Kingdom. And that's something that she's been working on day in, day out for the last 2 years.
Right, let me be brutal, however. If she doesn't make it through this second round, where does your vote then go, bearing in mind this sort of schism between Rishi Sunak and Penny Mordaunt and the rest?
I think we have to focus on this next round of voting. And the point I would make, I mean, I think the MPs have nearly finished voting now, but in case any of them are watching now, I've just done a survey of my members across Warwickshire and Worcestershire. And they have all come back to me and said, who would they like to see in the final round? Yes, they want to see Penny Mordaunt, but Kemi has been all of the other candidates to go into the final two. I've just received that data, that's live data. Given she's come from a standing start less than a week ago, the fact that she is now polling second amongst all of the members in a very kind of diverse area of the country, lots of different challenges that I face in my constituency. And can I also say, this is not about Brexit, Leave or Remain. Kemi's supporters are people like me. I've served in Theresa May's government and Boris Johnson's government. I voted for Brexit all through my parliamentary career, but I am definitely not one of the sort of, I'm not on the sort of very purist. And I'm being, of course I'm not. But I've got people who are working with me as colleagues who were in that grouping. But actually, we think this is about more than that. Brexit is really important, don't get me wrong. We have to deliver it. We have to harness those benefits, but we have to be very clear about our own record, which I think has been phenomenal in government, and now it's time to go forward.
We'll have to leave it there, especially as you've got 9 minutes to get back over the road and find out what's happening to your candidate with that voting. But thank you very much indeed for joining us and bringing us the very latest there from Westminster. Great stuff. Well, you're watching On the Money, and it's me, Mark Longhurst, today, sitting in once again for Liam. And coming up after the break, we're heading to a food bank in Kent. Yes, they are struggling with ever higher demands from families, hoping the government can lighten the load. That first tranche of the cost of living payment being distributed today, and the families feeling the pinch as those food and dairy prices soaring, hitting our farmers too. More of that coming up in a moment. Stay with us. You're On the Money.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. You're On the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, sitting in again once today for Liam. But amid all this chaos and confusion, we've been asking, can we actually afford a new Prime Minister? Even though the OBR, that's Britain's tax watchdog, says there may well be some headroom to afford tax cuts, it seems that none of the remaining candidates in this leadership campaign have been addressing the burning question, how are they really going to address the cost of living crisis? The AA, remember, saying the wholesale price of petrol has fallen, yet our pump prices, they say, still 4p a litre too expensive. The cost of shopping, the milk and butter, especially up almost 23% on last year. So food banks are now struggling to get enough donations to keep everyone supplied as more and more families struggle to survive. Let's hear from those at the sharp end of all this. Let's bring in Neil Charlick, who's running Gillingham Street Angels, a food bank in the Medway area of Kent, and dairy farmer Steve Evans joining us from Wales, and of course still in the studio with us, our economist and founder of moneymagpie.com, Jasmine Birtles. But thank you to all of you. Neil, first I think we'll go to you to ask you what the situation is there at the sharp end with these food banks. I mean, we've heard reports elsewhere that actually the donations are going down, yet the number coming to you to actually try and get help is increasing.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, currently at the moment, we're feeding about 12,500 people a month, and the numbers are just ever increasing. We're very lucky. We're very well supported locally, local government, our local MPs, our local councillors, the council in general have been very good to us because they know there's a need in our area. So we are quite lucky with that. But we have to constantly be out looking for food, trying to increase the amount. 12,500 people at the moment, and that's only going to get worse. This problem just seems to be getting worse and worse. I understand that obviously there are problems in Parliament, and they're arguing, they're doing what they can to agree who's going to be the new Prime Minister. All from my point of view, I'd like is someone who's going to get the job done. We just need the assistance. We're just one of maybe thousands of food banks over the country that are all struggling. The voluntary sector is struggling. There's people with pets, people with all sorts of things that are just going to struggle. So I really hope it's someone who kind of puts their money where their mouth is and actually does the job and gets stuff done for us.
OK, well, look, we've got this £326 being delivered today to those people on various benefits as a one-off payment. There's a second tranche. I mean, do you think perhaps that better money would have been better spent giving it directly to this food bank network, for instance?
I think some people that'll be a month, maybe a month's electric for people. So that is going to assist people. But we're finding the kind of people who come to the food bank has changed massively. Where originally we were just street homeless people, then people in supported housing. Now we're getting people in full-time jobs come to us in problems. Obviously, we would like as much funding as we can get. We need the money to be able to carry on our work. Our electric bills, our gas bills, our fuel bills, all these things are rising for us as well. It's not just the people indoors. For us to be able to operate, our costs are doubling as well. So obviously we appreciate all the donations and support we can get. But I think there's a lot more needed to be done on a lot of different levels.
And of course, the foodstuffs that people want to bring to you are going up, as we've indicated, milk particularly, and dairy up to 22.9% on the year. Let's bring in Steve there down in Wales for us. Steve, we assume that the dairy farmers aren't making this extra profit on the side.
Certainly not. Agricultural inflation for us at farm level is running around 32% compared to last year. Our costs are phenomenal at the moment. We're now faced with quite a nasty dry spell of weather. Milk output is falling. Numbers of stock for sale are increasing, so the supply into the market is continue to drop. We're faced with some extremely tough decisions about this winter in terms of feed costs, things like that. So, yeah, it's particularly challenging. Yes, don't get me wrong, our milk price has gone up. We're sort of getting 47, 48 pence per litre at the moment. Marvellous compared to last year, until you factor in all of the cost of production rising. So, you're then seeing that in the marketplace then, because we can't bear these costs. You know, we can't continue mining our balance sheet.
You've got to pass on something to the consumer. Well, let me ask you what you think the government can do, because, for instance, fertiliser costs to actually get your grass crop and hay crops and things up, that's actually being hit by what's happened with Ukraine and Russia. So it's beyond the government's control in a way.
It is, to a degree. You've got some issues in the UK around fertiliser supply. We're one of the largest fertiliser plants in the UK, which ironically is American-owned, has sort of shut down production back in the spring. You've now got it we're sort of looking this autumn for buying fertilizer to use next spring. It's can they do something not to force the fertilizer plant to open, but to say, look, guys, we've got a major problem around food supply in the UK now, which, to be fair, we knew was coming. We could see it coming.
Yeah.
So you're talking about an emergency plan, in other words, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. There's a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who's a buyer of livestock for a large supermarket chain, and he spoke to me yesterday, and he said, "I need another 1,000 lambs every week between now and September to fulfil the demand." Well, those livestock aren't there, and it's the same with us with the dairy. The dairy cattle are not there because people can't afford to keep them.
Steve, Neil, not a happy picture, but clearly you're both doing the best you can for the moment. Thank you for that. Let's just get some reaction with Jasmine here in the studio, listening to both those tales. I mean, it's really tough. And there is this question, actually, whoever gets into government, how much can they do about it?
Absolutely, and because it is a global problem, but certainly in this country we have not looked after local production anything like as much as we do, and we need to up production, we need to increase the amount of food and help local suppliers get
resilience. It used to be called.
Yes, resilience is a good word, because people. I mean, I just give you another figure. Barclaycard has come up with a figure of 39% more that we're now paying households on utilities. So year on year. So if we're paying that amount and then food starts going up, then you have riots. So it's essential that...
See what's happened in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's just the start, I think. So it is absolutely essential that we have an emergency, really good plan to deal with food production and supply in this country.
Jasmine, thank you. You're staying with us, of course, for this hour of On the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, sitting in for Liam. Coming up, we're hearing why just 1 in 3 dads in the UK can take paternity leave. First, so let's get to latest GB News headlines with Rhiannon.
Thank you, Mark. It's 1:33. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Voting has just closed in the second round of the Conservative leadership contest. 6 contenders remain in the battle to replace Boris Johnson: Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Tom Tugendhat, Liz Truss, Suella Braverman and Kemi Badenoch as it stands. They, though, will be whittled down when the results announced at around 3 o'clock. Foreign Secretary Liz Truss launched her campaign this morning, saying she wants Britain to be an aspiration nation. Train drivers at 8 rail companies will go on strike on the 30th of July in a dispute over pay. That's in addition to a strike by RMT members on the 27th of July. The Train Drivers Union ASLEF is demanding a pay rise in line with inflation. The Department for Transport says drivers already earn significantly more than the average salary in the UK. 3 men accused of being leading members of an organised crime group have been charged with people smuggling offences. They were among 4 people arrested by the National Crime Agency in East London and Essex on Tuesday. They're accused of attempting to smuggle people into the UK in the back of lorries. They'll appear before Reading Magistrates Court later. Kevin Spacey has pleaded not guilty to sexual assault charges at the Old Bailey. The Oscar-winning actor is accused of 4 counts of sexual assault and 1 count of causing a person to engage in sexual activity without consent. The attacks are alleged to have taken place between 2005 and 2013. He'll go on trial next June. And Emirates has refused to cancel flights at Heathrow after the airport capped the number of daily passengers at 100,000. The airline says Heathrow only gave 36 hours to comply and that rebooking passengers was impossible because all of its flights are full over the coming weeks. Heathrow says it would be disappointing if any airline puts profit before passenger safety. TV online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy $1.183 US and 1.182 euros. The price of gold currently stands at £1,447.76 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the finance report on GB News for real-time investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, mate. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Welcome back. You're watching On the Money with me, Mark Longhurst, once again sitting in for Liam. And it's an important day today in the government's efforts to combat the cost of living crisis, as we've been hearing. £326 being issued to some 8.2 million households. It's the first tranche of a special payment. But should there actually be more assistance? Well, a charity in London stepping in to help combat the ongoing problems by offering people a free financial meeting. Now, Debt Free London offers the public advice on everything from tackling debt to how to pay the rent. Our reporter Rosie Wright has more for us. Rosie, you're down at Peckham High Street. It's quite interesting, this, because financial advice normally only available to those who are, well, rather well-heeled, shall we say.
Yes, you would think so, but today, through a variety of different organisations, I've been speaking to people whose charitable organisations are based around the ethos of giving people, those really, really struggling with the cost of living. And I'm not talking about here sort of cutting back on some of those luxury items in the supermarket, but people in real financial difficulty. Variety of organisations providing free financial advice and often helping them come up with plans to get them out of debt. I was at Debt Free London this morning and they said, one of the advisors I spoke to said, I've really had to reevaluate what I think of when I think of low-income households, because some of the people that she'd been speaking to in recent weeks were doctors, teachers, people looking at their incomings and their families and thinking, we just can't make ends meet. Well, today's been quite a crucial day. £650, the first instalment of it, £326, landing in the bank accounts of nearly 8 million, just over actually 8 million people. Well, just a few hours ago, I was in Lewisham at a Christians Against Poverty debt centre, and I met Alan, who's received that payment this morning, and I asked him how significant it was to receive it.
It is significant in the sense that it helps me on the short term, but I'm a single person by myself, so my needs are less than a full family running gas and electric and a go-go, you know. So for them, from like my sister, my mum, who's an OAP, yes, it's very much harder. It's that's the way of life.
Alan is in debt, and he said actually what this payment will allow him to do is just buy a couple of those extra luxuries. And for him, a luxury was things like buying a haircut, getting ice cream at the supermarket so he could have a special dessert. Now, we might think those are absolute essentials, not luxuries. Well, I spoke to Mel as well. She's one of the debt advisors, and she said this might help people in the short term, but in the long term, it's not really sufficient.
I think it's good news and we welcome it. I think it's really helpful, but it's not helpful in their long-term budgeting problems or how tight it is when you're on a low income. So more of a regular payment would be better for people long-term, I think.
When you talk about people being on low income, what kind of financial situations are people in, the type of people who will receive that payment today?
They could be in debt. So a lot of our clients they come to us because they're in debt, or they're just struggling to make ends meet, and it's just really tight. It's just a tight budget, and it can be really hard to live like that long term. Yeah.
So the first instalment lands in bank accounts today. It's automatic. If you are eligible and you receive your benefits and you apply, then it will just automatically turn up in your bank account. But from what I've been hearing today, for the people who really are grappling with the cost of living, this helps a little bit, but it for sure isn't enough.
Rosie, thanks very much indeed for that. And of course, we'll keep our eye on that story. And as you say, a second tranche of money to come a little later. Thanks very much indeed. Now, we may well be in the 21st century and counting, but it seems that the gender pay gap still remains a glaring discrepancy for many parts of UK PLC. Now, the Office for National Statistics has revealed in its October report that the gap among full-time employees was 7.9%, up from 7% in 2020. A contributing factor, the tendency for women in leadership roles to sacrifice their career progression to look after their young kids. Now, only 8 of the country's top 100 companies are being run by women at the moment. So, how can those women, and more broadly, of course, parents in leadership roles, strike a better work-life balance? Well, joining us in the studio, Verena Hefti, MBE, founder and CEO of Leaders Plus. Thank you very much indeed for offering a little bit of help and progression to us, because clearly this, for many families now, you know, if mum has to give up for the kids, it can make a difference as to whether that family can keep their heads above water.
Exactly. And what we tend to see is people just get stuck at the point when they have children. You see reasonably equal career progression between men and women until people have children. And then after that, that's when the women get stuck. And it's not because they don't want to progress.
No.
It's because it's not set up.
And clearly, in terms of their professional development, that's the stage when they really should be spreading their wings and learning new skills and helping to grow businesses. Because, I mean, there's a very interesting argument about how successful a woman on the board or a CEO can be. They have a slightly different attitude to business, many of them, from men.
Exactly, and a lot of strengths, for example, empathy, that a lot of women do bring and have been socialised to have, are absolutely critical to make decisions that are robust. And also, there is some research that women tend to jump less into really big, risky decisions. And
What, they're not more cautious, but more thoughtful?
That's the one. Obviously, individuals are different, but just a general trend seems to be that.
Right, OK. I think we're having a little problem with your microphone, Verena, for the moment. We'll come back to you. We'll sort that out. But let's just break away for the moment and come back to talk about that, because it's time now, I think, for us to look at our daily interview series, Money Talks. Now, Liam's been interviewing Darren Brewer, who's co-founder and managing director of a Portsmouth-based property company, ProPod. Now, he's built a portfolio of almost a dozen properties comprising a total of 90 individual bedrooms. Now, the importance is each has a personal tenancy agreement for those working in and around the city. Having converted both period homes and redeveloped rundown retail units, ProPod wants to spread beyond Hampshire. But Darren says the increasing tendency of local authorities to demand council tax for each bedroom, rather than the shared property as a whole, threatens his business and could lead to widespread arrears. Well, here's Darren's interview, our latest guest on Money Talks.
Darren, tell us the principal idea behind your business.
So basically, the idea is a very modern day shared accommodation for young professionals to be able to stay in our properties with other young professionals, and basically for them to have a very good quality bedroom with an ensuite.
And you've built a portfolio, you've got 10 properties, you've got 80, 90 rooms under your management. How's the business going?
Pre-COVID, very well. Obviously, with COVID, everything came to a standstill. But actually, we were very busy in COVID in lockdown, because at the end of the day, we had a lot of doctors and nurses who needed to come to the city, and we were managed to help the hospital house them. But over COVID and over lockdown, we noticed there was a problem that the government was starting to ban our bedrooms for individual council tax purposes. And that has really stumped our growth.
When did your business start, Darren?
So our first ProPod was launched in 2017. We had the idea in 2016, and we worked on it for a year before we actually launched the first house.
And it's entirely based in Portsmouth, of course, pretty serious city on the south coast. There's lots of old period accommodation that I know you've developed quite a lot of it. You're also, as I understand, taking on more modern buildings that are underdeveloped and producing high quality rented accommodation there as well.
That's right. So when we got to ProPod 6, we decided that actually maybe the high streets was the way forward for our model. There was a lot of secondary shopping areas where empty commercial shops, unfortunately, because of COVID, had sat empty. And I thought, actually, this may be the right way to reutilise these buildings, create little shops for independent traders, but actually renovate the uppers to suit our ProPod brand. And actually, to date, that has been very successful. And we actually find our ProPodians, as we call our tenants, they actually like living on the high street because all the essentials are there. They can get on the bus. The buses have Wi-Fi. They can do their work before they've even started work. And it's really accessible to them, to the whole city.
Just before we talk more about your particular business, let's just dwell on that idea. Converting high street retail units to residential units. A lot of people in towns and cities across the UK are seeing this happen. Are you converting the actual shops, or are you just enhancing the residential accommodation above shops?
So when we take a usual building, we will make the shop smaller so they can apply for small business rate relief once the property's been revalued for business rates. And then the rear of the ground floor we usually take for the communal areas with a garden. And then the uppers we then convert into bedrooms, and occasionally we add another floor to create more bedrooms.
This sounds like a really good idea. You're reinvesting in high streets which are often struggling. I mean, even in prosperous parts of the country, in the southeast, high streets are struggling. I guess this is something that government should be encouraging.
We'd like to think that the government sees what we're doing as a benefit to the high street. I'm very much an advocate of the high street. I still think it's a hub. I think it's the main hub of our communities. We all know high streets are going to change, but I think there's a place for the high street in every town, whether that would be socialising, working, living, co-working, bistro bars. I think there's a place to reutilise these high streets for the benefit moving forward for the next generation and this generation.
How's it been for you? You're developing, a number of properties in Portsmouth. How is it in terms of getting hold of tradesmen? How is it hold of getting electricians, plumbers, and all the rest of it? A lot of people talk about the difficulties, the lack of skills, particularly among people coming into the labour market, the lack of apprenticeships. How's it been for you developing a team of construction people to both develop and maintain your properties?
So we've noticed a difference. There's no doubt about it. We've noticed time frames are longer. We've had to wait longer for our builders to come on site and do the work, whether that's our main contractor or subcontractors. Materials have played a really big part. And the cost of materials and the cost of wages is also implicated on what we can do in the high streets in regards to what we can pay for these buildings.
So tell us about the particular beef that you've got at the moment, the issue that is, threatening your business, really, this idea of multiple council taxes on one property. Surely when you rent a home with other people, there's always been, common communal areas, a common kitchen, maybe a common bathroom shared between some of the bedrooms. Why is it that under your model, your ProPodians, your tenants, your renters have to pay separate council tax?
So what we've realised is, from the Valuation Office Agency's point of view, is that once these tenants have their own tenancy agreement, they then become exclusive and actual and beneficial possession of that bedroom, even though they are sharing kitchen and lounge and dining room and utility features. You know, they have their own front door. There's only one door. You know, we pay all the gas and electric and the water bills. But the Valuation Office Agency, because they are being taken, or they're looking at the government policy, is what is a hereditament, i.e. a dwelling. The bedroom is passing, or in the VOA eyes, it's passing those 4 tests. We don't believe it actually is passing the 4 tests, but whatever we do, whether we appeal it or go to a tribunal, every time it comes back, well, we're adhering to the Council Tax Act 1992 policy.
Darren Brewer there talking to Liam, and of course ProPod in Portsmouth, keeping the high street thriving as it seems. And don't forget, you can hear more of that interview on our Money Talks podcast on our very own YouTube channel. But let's return now to Verena, founder and CEO of Leaders Plus, joining us. I do apologise for our little sound problem there, but we're back with you because you were just talking about the whole issue of companies losing talented women to have their children, but not just the sort of commercial sector, I mean, even the NHS.
I have been absolutely blown away by how much demand there is from NHS doctors, nurses, allied health professionals to get support to progress their careers and not just stay in roles with babies and children in tow, but actually get to the most senior role. But at the moment, in some places it's easy to get flexible work, in others not. Generally, the system isn't set up for working parents. You have to have a full-time stay-at-home wife or husband at home, ideally, to sort it out.
And I get, you know, it always will be for the parents. The child has to come first, and it's this thing about head versus heart, isn't it? I guess?
Exactly, and yet you still want the best brain surgeon, who very well may be someone with a baby and toddler in tow.
So tell me a little bit more about what you're offering, because I gather one of the things that you say you can do is create a fellowship, which is interesting. Like normally something you have at a university, for instance. How does that work with people?
Well, the reason why we call it a fellowship is because the system is imperfect. So we need to get people together who are parents and unapologetically want to get to the top jobs.
Right.
And we bring them together and we give them some of the best world-class career development input. We also support them with just the practical challenges, how to leave on time at 5 o'clock, even though there's a big drama going on, and still be leadership potential and be seen as a good candidate for the next top job.
So like masterclasses, in other words?
It's more than that. We do really get people to think quite deeply about the assumptions they're having, because they have internalized so many assumptions about what is expected
and
of
I
them.
guess not getting help from the company to make that decision.
Exactly. And I mean, there are some brilliant companies out there, but it's also the wider society. So many aunties, friends, family who tell them, well, surely now you have such a cute baby, surely you want to take it easy. And all those messages.
That individual trying not to feel guilty when they say, well, I still want to advance my career.
Exactly.
Yeah. OK. Let's just turn to the Tory party leadership, because it won't have escaped your notice. There are actually quite a few women in the running. We were talking about how maybe women in business have a different approach to various decision-making processes. From your point of view, would it be better for us to have a female Prime Minister, or doesn't that actually really matter that much?
It would be marginally better. And the only reason why...
Faint praise.
And the only reason why... I mean, I'm in favour, and I'm going to lobby people to do that.
Yep.
But the reason why it's better is to have a role model to aspire to. But the problem is it's not solved with just a female Prime Minister. We need to have bigger change. And as we've seen in the past, female Prime Ministers do not always lead change for others.
Yes, certain Margaret Thatcher, of course, called the Iron Lady, but obviously Theresa May not quite in that bracket. But Verena, thank you very much indeed for coming to speak about Leaders Plus, and of course people can approach you to try and find out how you can specifically help them on their various problems. But thanks for that, and bearing in mind your problems with the microphone, but we heard you loud and clear. So let's reflect that we've got the voting underway at Westminster. That's all we've got time for today. But to remind you, we're back tomorrow at 1 p.m. for more business, economics, consumer, and not forgetting politics news. We'll see who's in that running as the next Prime Minister. It's been a pleasure to be with you once again here on GB News. I'm Mark Longhurst, sitting in for Liam, and that was On the Money.
Hi there, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's a cooler day for many today before the heat builds over the next few days once again. Showers in the north, but otherwise sunny spells. High pressure is currently sitting just to the southwest of Ireland and around that high. Well, we do have some changeable weather and some cooler conditions for the north of the UK, for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, for Northern England. A good deal of cloud cover and some showers, some heavy showers in places, particularly over the Pennines, the Highlands and Grampians, and the showers will be fairly frequent around the Northern and Western Isles. Now, for the rest of England, as well as for much of Wales, it's brighter skies with some sunshine and still fairly warm in the south, 26 or 27 Celsius, but high teens further north, where temperatures are actually a little below average right now. That will change, not just at the moment, though. For the time being, we're going to see the cloud thin overnight and the showers ease away before another spell of mainly light rain, but some moderate bursts pushes into Northern Ireland, Western and Central Scotland. 13 or 14 Celsius for Scotland and Northern Ireland, 12 to 13 further south under clear spells in the south, so not an oppressive night. We will see more of those at the start of next week, but Friday starts off bright with some sunshine in the south, the cloudier weather further north, and areas of rain moving through Scotland and Northern Ireland as well as Northern England during the first part of the morning before that's replaced by showers. And again, on the cool side with those temperatures, 18 or 19 Celsius for Scotland and Northern Ireland, mid to high 20s in the south, where it will be another largely sunny day. Into Friday evening, the last of the showers in the north clear away, and then clearer skies start to emerge. And this is where things begin to change. High pressure arrives this weekend. Widespread sunny skies eventually develop and temperatures really start to increase.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV.
On radio.
On digital. Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We are not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing.